What's up YouTube, this is Dennis Panuta for tutorialsEU/Unity. In this video you are going to learn how to build your first user interface, and we're going to use a button for that. And in the end what we want to do is, with the two buttons, we want to tilt our map so that our player can fall down and reach its goal basically. So let's look into how to build our first user interface in this video. And by the way, this is only a part of the entire series, so definitely check out the playlist if you haven't checked out the other videos building this game from scratch. And also hit the like button, subscribe button if you feel like you're going to build more of those UIs in the future. So let's get started. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to take care of the user interface that will then allow us to actually impact the game with our input, which means we are going to be able to press a button and the button will then rotate our maze here either towards the left or towards the right. In our case, the maze is really just a block square here, but it will change over time, of course. We're going to add an actual maze later on. In order to add graphical user interface items to our game, we can go to our hierarchy here. And by the way, this is a good moment to save the scene, otherwise it will be lost. So then right click here and you can see that there is this UI option where you can then select from a lot of different UI elements such as buttons, images, text, sliders, and so forth. So I'm just going to use the button for now. And let me add that here. And you can see the button is added to our game here. The position of the button is arbitrary. We're going to change that. We're going to change the button's appearance overall. And not only the button was created for us, but the canvas was created for us as well. And on top of the canvas, which is the parent of the button, it also generated something called an event system. So the event system object is there to help the messaging system, since the event system is the one responsible for processing and handling events in a Unity scene. Events could be something like a button click. So once we click on this button, an event will be triggered and the event system takes care of how this is then handled in Unity. So before we change our button, let's quickly go over to the canvas. And you can see we can change the render mode of our canvas. There are different options such as camera, overlay, and world space. So overlay is an option where it's just basically an overlay to our game, which is not directly impacting the game's items itself. It's really just an overlay on the game view, so to speak. Because if you go to the scene, you will notice that this is our game area, super small, right? But then this button is huge. It's at the bottom left of our screen. And if you scroll all the way out, you will see that this is basically our window that we have here. So this is the screen that we can see once we run the game. So this is going to be the overlay that will be put onto our game's view, no matter where the camera is, so to speak. So that's why we're getting this button here at the bottom left, and we have this overall overview. So in order to see the canvas from a good angle, you can double click on the canvas and then you can see, okay, this is how the canvas will look like in your game. You have the button at the bottom left hand side, and now you can just go ahead and adjust the user interface. So how your graphical user interface looks and what kind of elements it does have. One thing that you will also notice is that the canvas doesn't have a transform component, it has a rect transform component. So it's a rectangular transform, which has positions X, Y, and Z, but also a width and a height. So they're driven by the canvas right now, so I cannot change them for now, but that's all right. So let's quickly look at our button now. Quick pause. The video that you're currently watching is just a fraction of the entire course that I have to offer. So I built this complete Unity masterclass course in which you're going to learn how to build real games and how to build them from scratch. So you're going to learn how to build a platformer game, how to build a Space Invaders clone, how to build a Fruit Ninjas clone and optimize it for mobile and export it for mobile as well, how to build a first-person shooter game, and finally how to build a tycoon game similar to Adventurists, which is an endless game. So if you want to become a real game developer, definitely check out the course. You can find the link in the description and you will get the course with a huge discount, so don't hesitate, as you will not only get the course, but you will also get it in a structured manner with all of the code, as well as a Q&A section with a 5-star support. So get the course now. I hope to see you there. So what we can see is that our button is centered in the middle, and then it just says the position is minus 345 for the X value and minus 194 for the Y value. And we can change that anytime by setting the value, for example, to 0, 0. But what will then happen is that the button will be in the middle of our game view, because we have selected the middle center as the point from where the UI element is considered. So you can change that by changing the anchor presets. For example, if I want the item to be at the bottom left, it would make sense to select bottom and then left. So bottom for the row and left for the corner. So it will be at the bottom left, so to speak. And now you can see suddenly the position of my button is at 426 and 209. So these numbers will be different in your case, but basically it just says, okay, the button stays at the same spot where it was, but the relative position to the bottom left now will be 426 for X and 209 for Y. So if I set those to 0, 0, you can see that now the button is at the bottom left, but the center of the button, to be precise, is exactly at the 0 point here. So once you've selected bottom left as your anchor preset, let's go ahead and change the position X, something like 80, as well as the position Y to 15. Why 80 and 15? Well, because the predefined width was 160 and the height was 30. So I wanted the button to be just at the corner of the bottom left-hand side. So I'm just going to use half of the width and half of the height for the X and Y values. So now you see the button is at the bottom left-hand corner. So now let's have a quick look at what the button else has to offer. So first of all, you see it's a rect transform here as well. It's not a transform as we have seen with our game objects, but UI items have this rect transform instead. Then we have the canvas renderer, which takes care of rendering the canvas. And then you see that we have an image. So in this case, it's just a white background image with a black border. This is something we can adjust if we wanted to, but for now this will just be the default, and you see it just gives it a background. So without this image there would be no background. You see suddenly the button doesn't have a background if I deactivate the image here. Okay, I'm going to keep that in here. You can change the source image by dragging another image in here. You would then change the background of your button. And then you have a couple more settings for the button, like the normal color that the button will have. Then once you click on the button, so once the button is pressed, what color should it have once the button is selected, and so forth. So you can change the colors for all of that. And once any of those transitions is changing, what will be the fade duration? So how long will it take until it basically takes this color entirely, and so forth. And then you have this on click, which is something that we will definitely need to look at later, where you can basically say, okay, what should happen once we click on this button? That is something that we're going to look at later. For now, let's just make sure that we duplicate our button. So here, I'm going to right click and duplicate. And now we have two buttons, button 0 or button without any additional details, and button 1. So let's change the position of button 1 to be at the bottom right hand corner, and change the X and Y positions here as well. So here, if we take minus 80 for the position X and 15 for the Y position, we will see that our button now is at the bottom right hand corner. Why minus 80? Well, because the coordinate here for the X direction is going towards the right for positive values and towards the left for negative values. Because we want to position the button further to the left, we need to add the position of minus 80. But generally you can play around with this value to see where your button needs to be positioned, and position it so that it fits into your screen correctly. Now let's actually look at the button a little more, because if you open up the button here in your hierarchy view, you can see that there is another item in there, which is a text. And now this text, that's where the text of the button, which we see that says button here. So for the button 1, I'm going to set the text to equal greater than sign. So that's basically a right arrow, so to speak. And then for the other button, I'm going to do the opposite, basically showing towards the left-hand side by using the less than sign equal. Now at this point, it would make sense to rename the buttons because they are not really descriptive as button and button 1. So let's change the values here, going to the inspector, and the left button, well, I'm going to call this one left button. And then the right button, so this one here, I'm going to call right button. And that's going to be it for our UI for now. Now, if we run our game, we will see that we have those two buttons, but of course they don't do anything. But you see the tint, once I click on the button, you see that the button is changing its appearance a little bit. So let's take care of actually being able to influence what happens in our game by pressing any of those buttons in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now you're one step closer to becoming a Unity game developer. And if you haven't liked the video yet, please do so now, as well as subscribe. And also make sure to follow along in the playlist to become a real Unity developer. And if you want to fast track the whole development process of becoming a developer, then definitely check out our Unity masterclass, in which you're going to build a bunch of games, and while doing so, learn everything you need to know about game development and, well, have your first couple of projects under your belt. So check it out. The link is in the description below. You will get a huge discount, and I hope to see you in the next video.